on the road against the Southeast. Oh, my!
The Miami Heat is one of the most interesting NBA teams for the 2020 season. They're coming off a finals appearance where they were matched up against LeBron, Anthony Davis, and the rest of the Lakers. Most didn't regard the Heat as having much of a chance to win it all. And this season, they're an even bigger underdog for the playoffs because of the additions the Nets have made in the East. Still, there's a reason to believe the Heat might surprise some people. In this video, we'll look at some bold predictions for the Heat in 2021. But first, a simple reminder on how to enter our brand new giveaway. We're giving away either an iPhone X Max, the new iPad mini, or a MacBook Pro. It's all your choice, so be sure to leave a like, comment the keyword, subscribe, and turn on notifications to enter this giveaway. It's really that simple. The Miami Heat will make a big name trade. The Heat are looking to get back into the finals this season, and we can all see that. No one expected them to be there in 2020 instead of a team like Milwaukee or Toronto, and the Heat are a winning franchise that isn't just going to let their surprise success fade away without doing anything to try and keep it around. But there are also a lot of obstacles to the Heat getting back to the finals. The Bucks managed to bring Giannis back for some more years to try and get out of the Eastern Conference for once. And the Nets made a big trade to add James Harden to their already volatile but dangerous trio of stars. Brooklyn already came into the season as the favorite to advance out of the East, but they've become even more of a favorite, while the Heat haven't moved that much since 2020 in terms of the level of their roster. We can only imagine the Heat will try to do something about this instead of fading away in the face of opponents who have newfound experience and better players helping them out this year. After all, it's debatable if the Heat could even beat the Bucks in a playoff series again if the two teams met in the 2021 playoffs. Against the Nets, the Heat would be an even bigger underdog. It's impossible for the Heat's front office to not realize that at this point. And knowing that the Heat is run by Pat Riley, who is more ambitious than most executives and carries a reputation that might be able to get some players that wouldn't normally come to a team in the Heat situation, we can guess that a big trade might be coming to shake things up. Tyler Herro has made himself out to be a star for the Heat, but he was rumored to be a player that they could move during the offseason. Herro was even brought up as a possible trade option if the Heat wanted to acquire James Harden from the Rockets. Of course, we now know that Harden was traded to the Nets and that several other teams believed the price was too high to do a deal. It's also debatable if Miami really would have wanted to sign a diva player like Harden, who had problems with the organization in Houston, which explains partly why the deal never happened. But that doesn't mean that the Heat won't trade Herro. It's possible they could still make a deal happen if there's another star player available that could help put the Heat over the top to make the team into a real title contender. But Harden is already off the market, and it doesn't look like another star player is going to change teams in such a deal soon. So this one might be a bit more of an unlikely prediction at this point, even if the Heat would like to reload in their title hunt. Udonis Haslem, who has played more games with the Heat than anyone else, didn't like the idea of trading Herro and trying to win now with James Harden. He came out rather publicly after fans around the league began talking about the merits of the deal the Nets reached, and said that it would have made him age 15 years to try to be Harden's OG. Haslem is the most veteran player in the locker room for the Heat, and has been so even during the team's title-winning runs when they have had more impactful players such as LeBron James and Dwayne Wade. You want approval from players like this when making big moves like a trade that would send Tyler Herro away for a superstar, and the Heat didn't have that kind of locker room support for that specific potential trade. The trade deadline doesn't actually come until months after the start of the season, so as far as the Miami Heat is concerned, there's still time to make a trade for a big-name player, even if the team did miss out on James Harden thanks to the high price the Rockets wanted in return. They didn't just want Herro, after all, but also Duncan Robinson and multiple draft picks. Bam Adebayo having a 2010 season. Bam Adebayo was crucial to the success of the Miami Heat when the team reached the finals last season. Ever since coming into the league, his usage has increased at a good rate, and last season was the first one where he was starting all 72 regular season games before the playoffs. His minutes went up from 19 to 23 to 33 in 3 completed seasons since he was drafted in the mid-first round by Miami, and he finished the season with 15.9 points per game and also had 5 assists per game. His assists per game metric has also been going up after he's gotten further experience, improving his passing game, and has gotten more time in the game to make plays for teammates. But the increase that the Heat should be looking for this season in Adebayo is one in his consistency all around now that he's firmly planted as one of the main members of their lineup. We should expect Adebayo to reflect his increased usage with a bit of a larger statistical increase this season. 20 points and 10 rebounds per game wouldn't be crazy. Rebounding was already one of the stronger points of his game as of last season, where he did pull off the averaging 10 rebounds part. He could have had a 20-10 average that year if he had been able to get 5 more points into his average per game, making this a realistic prediction. And Adebayo has been headed that direction from the early part of the season, averaging 9 rebounds per game so far, as well as 19.5 points per game so far. That doesn't break the threshold for having a 2010 season, but those numbers so far do put him very close. And if he shakes off a bit of rust, he could easily move up numbers-wise and show the Heat why he should deserve the kind of faith the team has shown his way. Miami Heat head coach Erik Spoelstra referred to Adebayo as no ceiling a few years ago, and the name has stuck. The name has also become more sure over the years, as we've seen Adebayo improve during each of his 3 completed seasons in the NBA. The only question right now during the 2020-21 season is whether or not Adebayo can continue improving at a rate like this while opposing defenses begin to key in on him more because of his larger role with the Heat on both ends of the court. Heat trades Kendrick Nunn. Kendrick Nunn recently made his return after being eliminated from the lineup because of health and safety reasons. But the point guard might be on the move this season if things follow a likely route. While the Heat proved that they have an interest in holding on to Harrow, it looks less likely that Nunn is in the plans of Miami long term. They already have other players at guard, both in the starting lineup and coming off the bench, with Harrow included in that group. Nunn played 29 minutes per game last season and had a larger role with the team, but that's already down in the limited numbers that he's played so far this year. He's only been on the court about half as much, with 17 minutes per game so far, and his name has come up in Heat trade rumors alongside others such as Harrow and Duncan Robinson. But out of those 3 players, Nunn looks like the most likely to actually get traded thanks to him falling out of use as a main point guard. Nunn wouldn't fetch the kind of big trade value that someone like Robinson or Harrow would, but it's safe to say he could find himself as part of a package in a larger deal if Miami does make one, or he may be traded for his own for another role player at a more convenient position that can contribute in some way to Miami's efforts without being a main starter. Jimmy Butler has his best season. Jimmy Butler stepped up in the playoffs last season. It was one of the main reasons that the Heat was able to make a run to the finals as a relative underdog, while defeating teams that earlier in the season would have been predicted to beat them. He wasn't just on top of his own game, but he also entered the history books in multiple areas, with his numbers putting him in the company of legendary players such as LeBron James, Jerry West, and Magic Johnson. He had one of the most commendable efforts for a player whose team ultimately lost in the finals. And without Butler, the result against the stacked Lakers team would have been far more lopsided than what it ended up being. During the 2020-21 season, the Heat will want to see more of the same Jimmy Butler that starred for them in the playoffs. In fact, getting back to the playoffs might hinge on Butler more than any other players on the roster right now. It's been a slower start so far for Butler, who hasn't played in all the games so far due to health and safety protocols. But there's a lot of season left, and it's safe to say Butler could still step up his game and play more like he did during the playoffs once he and the other Heat players are able to get on the court together more consistently. Right now, the Heat team has been struck by absences at multiple positions, and when they have everyone back and are able to field their best lineup, we might see better performances from several players. Butler would have to score 24 points per game to have his best scoring season, but with his triple-doubles and high-scoring performances during the playoffs, that looks like an achievable outcome if he can maintain that level of play.